Imagine you're 19 years old. You've never worked as a professional welder. You walk into a training shop, put on a helmet, pick up the equipment, and try to make your first weld. The arc keeps breaking. The electrode sticks to the metal. Your first bead looks terrible, but that's normal. Because welding is a trade where your career can change dramatically as your skills improve. You can start with almost no experience and eventually become a specialist, an inspector, a supervisor, or even the owner of your own fabrication business. So, what does that progression actually look like? Here are the 9 ranks of a welder's career. Rank 1, the student. Your first stage is learning the basics. You learn how to handle the equipment, prepare the metal, control the arc, and protect yourself from heat, sparks, and fumes. Then you start learning the different welding processes: MIG, TIG, stick, flux cord. Each one requires a different technique. You also discover that welding involves more science than it appears. Different metals react differently to heat. Too much heat can distort a part. Poor preparation can create defects, and even a weld that looks good on the surface can have problems underneath. Most of your progress comes from repetition. You weld, you inspect it, you find the mistakes, then you grind it away and try again. After several months, your hands become more controlled. You're still far from an expert, but you've learned enough to enter the workforce. You now have your first real trade. Rank 2, the production welder. Your first job is where welding becomes real. You might work in a fabrication shop producing brackets, frames, structural parts, or machinery components. And now, you're expected to repeat the same process over and over. That's the difference between school and production. The company doesn't just need one good weld, it needs hundreds of consistent welds. You start learning efficiency, how to position yourself before starting, how to set the machine correctly, how to prepare each joint, how to keep your workstation organized, and how to spot a problem before you've already ruined the part. The work is physical. You're standing for most of the shift, working around heat, noise, grinding dust, and sparks. But your hands are getting faster. Your welds are becoming more consistent. Eventually, your supervisor can give you a job without watching every step. You're no longer practicing, you're producing. Rank 3, the pipe welder. After gaining experience, you discover that some welding jobs demand much more skill. Pipe welding is one of them. Now you're working around curved joints instead of simple, flat surfaces. The welding position changes. Access can be difficult, and some welds have to be completed overhead. That means controlling the weld while working in an uncomfortable position, sometimes with hot spatter falling around you. You spend extra time practicing because passing a pipe qualification requires consistency. Eventually, you take the test. Your weld is inspected and examined for defects. If you pass, a new part of the industry opens up: industrial construction, power facilities, refineries, process piping. These jobs can pay substantially more because qualified pipe welders are harder to find. The work is more demanding, but now your skill has become more valuable. Rank 4, the certified welder. At this point, you realize that experience isn't the only thing that matters. Qualifications matter too. You begin collecting certifications for different processes, positions, and materials. Each qualification expands the kind of work you can legally or professionally take on. But your biggest improvement isn't actually the certificate. It's the way you think. A beginner sees metal and wants to start welding. An experienced welder first asks questions. What material is this? How thick is it? How should the joint be prepared? What process should I use? How much heat is appropriate? What could go wrong? That habit saves time and prevents expensive mistakes. You also become better at reading welds. You can look at a defect and start working backward to find its cause. Your reputation begins to grow. Supervisors know what you're capable of. Contractors know what qualifications you have, and you have more choices than you did when you started. Rank 5, the specialty welder. Now you have another decision. Do you want to become good at many types of welding, or extremely good at one difficult specialty? Some welders choose the second path. They move into advanced TIG work or specialize in materials such as stainless steel, titanium, or nickel alloys. The standards become much higher. Contamination can ruin a weld. Heat control becomes critical. Preparation has to be extremely clean. And in industries such as aerospace, pharmaceuticals, or specialized manufacturing, a small defect can make an expensive component unusable. That's why specialty welders can command higher rates. You're no longer being paid simply for operating a welding machine. You're being paid for precision and experience that relatively few people possess. Your reputation also starts working for you. A contractor needs someone with a specific qualification. Someone recommends you. Another company calls. Eventually, you may spend less time searching for work. The work starts searching for you. Rank 6, the welding inspector. After years behind the helmet, you may decide to move to the other side of the process. Instead of making the weld, you inspect it. A welding inspector studies codes, procedures, material requirements, inspection methods, and quality standards. Your job is to determine whether someone else's work meets the required specifications. Your previous experience becomes extremely useful. You've seen bad preparation. You've made mistakes yourself. You've learned how different welding problems appear. Now you can recognize those problems in someone else's work. You review welds, check documentation, verify qualifications, record defects, and make sure the work satisfies the project's requirements. Your hands aren't your primary tool anymore. Your eyes and your judgment are, and that changes the responsibility of the job. A welder is responsible for producing the weld. An inspector is responsible for deciding whether that weld should be accepted. Rank 7, the welding supervisor. Eventually, your experience can move you into management. Now you may be responsible for an entire welding crew, and suddenly your biggest problems aren't welding problems. They're people problems. One welder isn't meeting the required quality. Another is behind schedule. A machine breaks. Materials arrive late. A customer wants the project finished sooner, and you have to keep everything moving. You learn that being a great welder doesn't automatically make you a great supervisor. You need communication skills. You need to train inexperienced workers. You need to correct experienced workers. You need to organize schedules and maintain quality while still meeting deadlines. You also start developing younger welders. Some remind you of yourself when you first started. They ask questions. They stay late to practice. They want harder jobs, and now you have the knowledge to help them improve. Your career isn't just about what you can do anymore. It's about what you can teach other people to do. Rank 8, the shop owner. After years in the trade, some welders decide to build something of their own. They open a fabrication shop, and this changes everything. You need equipment, a building, insurance, employees, suppliers, customers, and enough work to keep the business alive. The surprising part is that you may actually spend less time welding. Your day becomes filled with estimates, customer calls, material orders, schedules, payroll, equipment problems, and decisions about which jobs the company should accept. You're no longer being paid only for your welding ability. You're building a business. If the shop grows, you can hire other welders and take on larger contracts. Eventually, the company itself becomes an asset, something you built that has value beyond your own labor. But the responsibility is much greater too. If the shop has a slow month, you still have employees and expenses to pay. Being a great welder got you here. Being a good business owner determines whether you stay here. Rank 9, the master. After decades in welding, the final rank isn't really about a job title. It's about experience. You've worked with different metals, different processes, different machines. You've made mistakes. You've fixed mistakes. You've trained beginners. You've inspected welds. You've managed crews. Maybe you've even built your own company. And eventually, younger welders start bringing their problems to you. They show you a weld. You look at it. And sometimes you can immediately tell what happened. The travel speed was wrong. The angle was off. The preparation wasn't good enough. The heat wasn't controlled properly. That's what decades of experience create. Not just better technique, better judgment, but welding also has a cost. It's physically demanding work. Long hours, heat, noise, awkward positions, heavy equipment, and years around industrial environments can take a toll. So reaching the highest rank isn't simply about earning more money. It's about becoming someone whose knowledge has value, even when you're no longer the person holding the torch. The student becomes the worker becomes the specialist becomes the expert becomes the mentor. And somewhere right now, another 19-year-old is putting on a welding helmet for the first time. Their first weld may be ugly. They may stick the electrode. They may have to grind the whole thing away and start again. But that's how every career begins. not with mastery, with one imperfect weld, then another and another, until one day someone else walks into the shop, makes the same mistake you once made, and asks you how to fix it. And that's when you realize how far you've come.